in. I'll give it a few more seconds. Just, everyone in from the waiting room. Okay, I think we can get started now. Hi, everyone. My name is Samantha Sukumnuth. I am the VP-elect of training this year. And before we get going with Grace, who is leading our training this evening, I just wanted to mention some upcoming trainings we have on our calendar. This coming Wednesday, the 23rd, we have a training on the jail board seat initiative program. On Tuesday, the 29th, we have a training with one of our own, Amy, using motivational psychology to be a more effective leader. That one might have been previously sold out, but we've opened up more slots. So if you had issues registering before, go back to the link. There should be more spots open. And then another one in October, Thursday, the 22nd, we have a night with Resolve New England, where we have two speakers from Resolve New England coming to talk to us. They are a nonprofit committed to advocating for the fertility community, so it should be a good training. So yeah, there are more coming, but those are the ones that we have on the calendar currently, and we have more added to the calendar. We just keep an eye out for any additional trainings. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Grace. Grace DaFonseca is in her 7th year in the Junior League of Boston, and throughout her league career, she's had many leadership roles, and the most recent one being Director of Nominating in the 2019-2020 board. She holds a lot of volunteer leadership positions outside of the Junior League as well, including Zoo New England and the Miami University Alumni Association. She has her JD in Health and Biomedical Law and currently works in ClinOps and Quality Management at a Boston biotech company. Grace, I'll hand it over to you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sam. So hi, everyone. My name is Grace. First, Shannon, can you guys still see my slide because the little highlight box went away? I don't know if that's because it's recording.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, good. I would like to think that I know how this technology works, but I definitely don't. So first of all, thank you to the Training Council for hosting a training on this topic. And I'm so glad to see so many of you here interested in it. Leadership in our league has made such a positive impact in my life. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. But I'm just so excited to share this info with you and hopefully demystify how the league is governed and how you can get involved. Feel free to ask questions throughout. I have the chat window open. I have the participants list open. So if you do the raise your hand feature or leave a comment in the chat, I will hopefully see it right away. And we can also ask any questions at the end. And yes, Jessica, I can share the slide deck afterwards. All right, let's get started. So first, here is the mission of the Junior League of Boston. I kind of have it in here out of habit. We definitely start all of our board meetings by reading the mission. And I decided to keep it in this training just because I wanted to point out a couple of things within our mission. So this phrase, developing the potential of women, this obviously includes the women in our community that we serve, but it also applies to all of our members as well, and developing our potential and being a leader in the league is a great way to do that. And the other phrase is trained volunteers. The league is a training organization, so just keep that in mind throughout the talk today. I know I was relieved to learn that I didn't have to know everything to become a leader. We're all here to support each other as we navigate leading the league. Something I'm always in awe of is how at league events, I'm just surrounded by so many amazing and accomplished women in Boston, and we can share our knowledge with one another to be the best league that we can be and lead the best league that we can. All right, quick run through of the agenda. I'll start out with some introductions, telling you a little bit more about myself, and then I want to hear a little bit about all of you. Then I'll go into an overview of how our league is governed, what the qualifications are to become a leader, how you can start mapping your league career, and some resources to help you with that mapping. So first, throughout the training, I'm going to be using Menti to ask some questions. Here's a test question just to make sure that A, it's working, and that B, everybody knows how to use it. So go ahead, pull out your phone, go to menti.com and enter that code at the top of the screen. And the code will actually stay the same for all the questions, so you can leave that browser window open, and it should automatically switch to the next question when I switch to that new slide. The code is 4700681. So the question is, how have you been spending your time since March? Maybe some of you work at a hospital and you've been super busy. Maybe you've had a lot of extra time on your hands and started a new hobby, like crafting, running, beach time. Oh, a new puppy. So many people got puppies and I'm so jealous. Running a lot, reading, got a new job. Impressive. That's quite a feat when the job market's not doing so well. Working and making cocktails, ditto, definitely on that one. All right, perfect. We have over 50 responses in, so I think we can safely assume that the Menti question is working and that we know how to use it. All right, awesome. So now about me. Here's how I've been spending my extra time at home. These two lovely ladies in the corner here, just hanging out with them on the sofa, binge watching way too much TV, working from home, definitely the cocktail part for sure. All right, so about me, I've lived in Boston for 10 years. I work at Cerevel Therapeutics, as Sam mentioned earlier. I joined the league to become more familiar with my community and to drive a positive impact. And I joined in 2014. And I've just listed here every placement I've had each year. I did this because Cerevel is a biotech, right? I am not a professional trainer. I'm not an expert on leadership or career mapping. However, I have experience with nonprofit leadership roles. And more importantly, I have specific knowledge about JL Boston's leadership processes. I've been in leadership for 5.5 out of my 7 years in the league, including 2 stints on the board of directors. I've gone through the appointed leadership process twice, the nominated process twice, and then obviously my most recent role last year as Director of Nominating, I served on the Nominating Council for 2 years. So I was part of the team directly responsible for interviewing and selecting our current board of directors and executive management team, as well as next year's. All right, now I want to hear about you. Some of you already answered. That's awesome. Oh. I didn't think I was going to get many sustainers. Oh, yay. All right, looks like mostly active members, which is fantastic. And I'm so glad to see new members here too. I'm hoping that new members really take away a lot of base knowledge from this training today that I certainly did not have at the get-go of my new member year. For instance, I didn't know what a sustainer was at the beginning of the year. So for those of you who are new members who may not be aware, I will just give you a quick run through. So after your new member year, you become an active member. After 7 active years in the league, you can switch to sustainer membership, which comes with its own benefits. Mainly dues are lower and there aren't any requirements anymore. It's the league's way of thanking you for your service. Not everyone goes sustainer. You can continue to stay active. You can go back and forth. We actually have a member who's going on her 21st consecutive active year. So everybody's path through membership definitely can take a different route. All right, awesome. And now, why are you here today? You can be honest. And if you answer other, feel free to use the chat to elaborate. All right, either only 3 people wanted to answer or we got stuck somehow. And I don't know how to tell the difference. Stuck, not letting me go. Okay, if that happens, try opening a new window with menti.com again and enter the code again. We'll see if that fixes it. Menti is great, but like all technology, it's certainly open to flaws and errors. Okay, we'll just move on. I'll assume you're all here because you want to be the next president. All right, so this one is just a really generic question. So what field are you in or what field are you interested in? If you're working right now, you can enter that. Like maybe you're in finance, maybe you're in education. If you're not working right now, you can enter an area where you have the most experience or where your interests lie, maybe an area where you volunteer a lot. Maybe you support the arts or STEM. You can enter more than one word too. And this is a like cloud response. So I'm sure you all know the more often somebody puts in a word, the larger it's going to be on the screen. And what I'm seeing is actually a few more medium-sized words, but a lot of individual different smaller words, which is exactly what I was hoping to see. This variety and this variety of experience and knowledge, this is what makes the league so amazing. We're all bringing our different skill sets to come together to make an impact, and this diversity is especially important to be seen in our leadership. So this is awesome. Yay, accomplished people. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right in then. So when we're talking about league governance, we have to start with AGLI. And if you're kind of wondering what is AGLI or what is the connection between AGLI and the Junior League of Boston, we're actually all members of AGLI and we are in the Boston chapter. So AGLI is the Association of Junior Leagues International. They're in 4 countries, 292 leagues, and about 140,000 members. And they really operate as one network. So they're led by their own board and governance committee, which are actually comprised of members from the 292 leagues, which means at some point, if you are ever interested in serving on the AGLI board or governance committee, you can 100% apply and serve our league in that way. They develop and maintain resources for us. They set standards. For instance, this is where our logo and branding guidance comes from. They offer training. I put Webinar Wednesdays in there with an exclamation mark because if you aren't aware of what Webinar Wednesdays are yet, definitely look into them. They're free to all members. They cover a variety of topics. They're so interesting. Just all the training AGLI offers is fantastic. It ranges from hour-long virtual sessions to weekend-long conferences for current leadership. Obviously, many of the topics are focused on league-related things, but there are definitely more agnostic ones that will definitely be useful in your life outside of the league too. For instance, they've done one on overcoming self-doubt, effective communications, time management. So definitely encourage you to take advantage of all the training options. They also facilitate collaboration and knowledge sharing among leagues. Yes, awesome. They post them on the calendar. And they provide guidance. So basically they are our best resource. They are the sort of linchpin between all the leagues to make sure that we all can make the best decisions possible by using our collective knowledge. It was actually at AGLI's recommendation that we have our current governance model at JL Boston. In fact, about a third of all of the leagues have now adopted that same model to much success. So before we jump into our model, I'm curious how many leadership roles you think JL Boston has this year. And if you're curious, I think, and maybe Shannon can correct me, I think we have 749 members this year, and a little over half are sustainer. All right, so the answer is 76. And I wanted to ask this question and really point this number out because I certainly didn't realize there were so many leadership opportunities and options in a variety of areas. And I wanted you to feel encouraged that there is one or more options in leadership that could be a great fit for you. All right, so what is our governance model? We have two governance bodies. So it's a split model. We have our board of directors, which is a strategic body. And then we also have our executive management team, which is our operational body. And underneath that falls all of our chairs, managers, and leads. And that's just a picture of our boardroom at headquarters. All right, so there are two paths to leadership. There's the nominated process and the appointed process. We'll look at nominated first. So the roles include all of the leaders on the board of directors and the executive management team, as well as the new member program manager and the nominating council. Nominated roles have a 2-year time commitment. Typically, you have an elect year followed by 1 year in the role. The elect year is really an opportunity for you to support the current director or VP while simultaneously learning the ins and outs of the role. This is one of those examples of us being a training organization. You sort of have this built-in year of training before you're in the role. The exceptions to this elect year plus 1 year are first the president, who actually serves 3 years, 1 year as an elect and then 2 in the role. And that is just so that we have this continuity from as the other members of the board come and go, we can have this sort of like unified strategy being overseen. The other exceptions are the nominating council and the at-large board of director members. They don't serve an elect year, so they still serve 2 years, but just in the role. The nominated leaders are slated into the role by the nominating council, which sits underneath the board of directors. These roles typically don't change year to year. A change in these roles would actually require a change to our bylaws, and that requires a full membership vote, so it's not a super simple, easy thing to do. To get one of these nominated roles, you do have to go through an application and interview process, and I'll get into those particulars later on. And just here I have what I call a pineapple tidbit. I just wanted to point out that many of our leaders, whether they're appointed or nominated, also serve on our DE&I committee, which is our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, which I think is fantastic that they're taking on that additional responsibility. Okay, so Megan is asking, so is executive management team like OPCO at other leagues? And I have to admit, I don't know what OPCO stands for. Operating committee. Essentially, yes. So they're going to be, I showed a little bit more here, where the board really focuses on strategy. The executive management team really focuses on the operations. So I'm hoping this visual helps you see that and see the reason why we have two different governing bodies. So split governance allows for an efficient spread of responsibilities. The board can focus on strategy and not be bogged down by the day-to-day details, while the executive management team can implement the strategy, do more of the management and operational roles, while chairs and advisors and leads carry out the strategy with their committees, and then they report back up to the EMT, and then it can report back up through to the board. Here you can see the different roles that sit on each. Over here, sort of floating, you can see nominating council falls under the board, but they don't have board seats. Only the director of nominating has a board seat. And then the new member program manager falls within the executive management team umbrella, but doesn't actually sit on that team. And then on the left, you can just see the strategic governance. The board really has this future focus, while the EMT really has a present focus. One thing I really want to point out, the executive vice president sits on both the board and the EMT. And this is to ensure that the two bodies are united, even if their focus is different, and it helps with clear communication. So last year when I was on the board, Tracy was our executive vice president. She came to every board member, or she came to every board meeting with a full EMT report to give the board updates on everything that had been going on. All right, so those are the leadership roles through the nominated process. And here are the leadership roles for the appointed leadership process. So appointed roles includes all the chairs, leads, and advisors. They serve 1-year terms, unlike the 2 years on nominated. There is a 2-year term limit, so you can't hold the same appointed role for more than 2 years. You're placed into the role by the Placement Council, which sits under the EMT. And roles that are available do change from year to year here, unlike the nominated roles. So for instance, if we have a particularly large new member class, we'll need more new member advisors that year. If there's a super large committee, it might need more than one chair to manage the responsibilities. We also change our programs every year. Every year, the EMT and the board look at our community programs and determine, is this an area that still needs to be served? Is this an area we need to expand? Are we in the right neighborhood to really make an impact? And you'll see some changeover with our programs year to year. The roles fall under the Board of Directors, EMT, Community, Membership, Fund Development, and Training umbrellas. So for example, JLB Arts would fall under Community. So that chair would report to and work closely with the VP of Community. Good question, Avery. Avery's asking if you can apply to a position you've previously held if time has passed. And the answer to that, so I assume you're meaning like you already filled the 2-year term limit. I think if a few years have passed, it is up to the discretion of the Placement Council and the VP or director, but I think at their discretion, you can serve in that role again. It's a good question. All right, and this also requires an application and an interview, which again, I'll get into those details later. Sorry that the list here is kind of small font, but I wanted to try and fit it all on one slide, but you can see there are a bunch of different awesome opportunities through the appointed process. And I know the difference between appointed and nominating can be a little puzzling. It definitely didn't make sense to me at first for a while, and I want to make sure that everybody at least thinks they understand. So if anybody has any clarifying questions they want to ask right now about that difference, I'd be more than happy to answer that before we move on. Okay, perfect. I'll move on. Oh, that division, meaning the appointed or the division between the two. Okay, so the division really is where the role falls sort of in, I don't like using the word hierarchy because I don't want to imply that a certain role is more important than another, but nominated roles tend to have more responsibility. So the president and the treasurer, for instance, carry responsibility to the entire league, whereas a chair really carries a responsibility to their particular committee. So there's just this designation here where the actual process to apply is slightly different. It's a little bit more rigorous to go through the nominating process than the appointed process, just because you are going to be carrying more responsibility. Yes, very, very nicely said. Not about power, it's just how they're managed. Exactly. All right. So I'm curious how long you think you need to be a member before you can apply for a leadership role. Yay. Okay, so clearly everybody knows the answer to this one already, which is awesome. I just wanted to make it a point that you don't have to be in the league for years and years to make a great leader. We bring in outside experience and it counts for so much. And I didn't want you to think you just had to buckle down and wait. So, all right, let's actually take a look at the qualifications then. As we get closer to talking about how you can start building your career map, I wanted to include the qualifications because I think it can help you sort of build a framework for determining which roles are right for you. So first, our bylaws and our handbook actually spell out some specific eligibility. It's not a whole lot of information, but it is important because it is governed by these documents. So for nominated, you are eligible to go through the nomination process if you are either nominated by another member or self-nominated. And it is open to active and sustainer members in good standing. Appointed leaders just need to be any member in good standing. Transfers are considered active. I'm 90% sure, Courtney.
I can jump in here.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Shannon.
So it would depend on their status in the league they're transferring from. So sustainers can still transfer in, as well as actives can transfer in and new members.
Okay, so if you're transferring in as a new member, you can't go through nominating, but you could go through appointed. Is that okay? Awesome.
Yes.
All right, so the main difference in eligibility between nominated and appointed is that new members can apply for an appointed role during their new member year. Nominated, you have to wait until you're in your first active year. So that's where we get 1 year versus 2 years for eligibility. And good standing just means you're up to date on all your obligations, dues, volunteer points, etc. So I'm sure that applies to the transfer thing as well. If you were transferring in and you're behind on any of your obligations, you wouldn't be eligible. The pineapple tidbit here is that sustainers can apply for any role, just with the understanding that they may have to switch back to active member status depending on the role. There are certain roles that we've written into our handbook and bylaws that can be held by sustainers. For instance, we always have to have a sustainer on our board of directors. I think it is just to ensure that the sustainers have a voice at that table. And it's great. The last few years, we've had 2 sustainers on each year. And they didn't have to go back to active, but if a sustainer wanted to apply to be VP of membership, they absolutely could. They just need to be switched over to active by the time they start their elect year. All right, so handbook and bylaws are official. Unofficially, and not to give too much away because the process is confidential, I'm just giving you a few qualities here that Nominating Council, for instance, would be looking at when selecting leaders. Sorry. So first is servant leadership. If you haven't heard this term before, I'm sure you've worked with somebody who was a servant leader. Any of the good leaders that you served under, like the bosses that you really admired or the directors that really listened to you and really cared, but still motivated everybody to work hard, they're all servant leaders. As leaders, we're here to serve our members, right? So we're a membership organization and we want to make sure that all of our members are having a great member experience. And we're also here to serve the community, which is really why we're here, right? It's in our mission, it's our purpose. And I have a little image here that just shows sort of a high level difference between traditional leaders and servant leaders. And this is something that AGLI is really big into. Pretty much at all their conferences, they have somebody named Vicki Clark, who is amazing. She always talks about servant leadership and her talks are fantastic, and you can actually access her presentations on the AGLI website to learn more about servant leadership if you're interested. And then we're also looking for a commitment to the league, right? So our members count on us. More importantly, the community counts on us to show up. You know, the saddest thing in the world is a group of girls showing up to their, I'm making this up, kids in the kitchen on a Saturday morning, and half the junior league members don't show up to spend time with them. So that commitment to the league is super, super important. And then we consider outside experience as well as league experience. So outside experience might be work, it could be other volunteering gigs. And I mean, you all answered the previous question correctly that you only need 1 to 2 years of league membership to become a leader. And this is exactly why, right? Because we can use that outside experience. And while we certainly want to ensure that like our president is a really seasoned member, you don't need years of league experience under your belt to be a great, great leader. And as we saw in that word cloud at the beginning, we have a diverse knowledge base and a wealth of experience that can together build a great and diverse leadership team. All right, so now we've looked at the list of the leadership roles that are available, and we know a little bit about qualifications. So let's talk about why you should consider leadership and how you can start to think about which of those roles might be right for you. So first, think about your qualifications and your goals. And I point out here that goals are important because we're a training organization. If you recall, when I was looking at the mission at the beginning, we're a training organization. So this just isn't about what the league can get from you, but what you can get from the league. So what skills do you have? What skills do you want? Maybe you do marketing for your day job and want to share those skills and that expertise and lead our communications team. Or maybe you want to go for a role that manages a large committee like community because you want that experience to add to your resume in hopes of becoming a manager in your department at work. What type of an impact do you want to make in our community? So some of our roles are what we call external, and those are the roles where you really are on the front lines, seeing the faces of the girls that we're helping every day. This would be like kids in the kitchen. Other roles are more internal, and while you're still making a huge impact, you're more removed from the front lines, so you won't always see that impact firsthand. So that would be like our secretary. What interests do you want to explore? What vision do you have for our league? If you have a really strong vision for our league and you have great ideas about how to implement that vision, then being on the board is the place for you to be because they help write our strategy for years to come. How much time can you contribute? So this is super, super important. You have to consider time when you're thinking about which role is right for you because each leadership role sort of requires or calls for a certain amount of time commitment. So while membership obligations don't actually change when you're in a leadership role, like it's still the same number of volunteer points that you are required to complete, the reality is that you end up doing more than that minimum amount. You know, some of the roles don't require much more than that, but some of the roles, obviously president, requires a lot more than that. So I encourage you to seriously consider what other obligations you have going on outside the league to ensure that you can keep a balance. The last thing we want is for you all to feel league fatigue. So think about like, am I starting a new job this year? Am I going to be moving? Did I just get involved in this other organization? And you can also consider the timing of the roles' responsibilities. So I've had teachers, for instance, tell me that they chose certain roles because most of the work falls in the summertime versus in the winter, and they're off in the summer. And then are you a big picture thinker or more detail oriented? So big picture, we tend to recommend the nominated roles because that's the strategy roles. If you're more detailed oriented, then we tend to recommend the appointed process. None of this is black letter law. First and foremost, I encourage you to go for the role that interests you the most, but if you're looking for a little bit of guidance, that might help you. And just talking about what you can get from the league, this is where I mentioned at the beginning, it's had a positive impact in my life. This is exactly why. So I'm 100% confident that I have my current job because of my involvement in the league and league leadership. So first it was networking with another league member that connected me with the recruiter. And then I was able to put all of that leadership experience on my resume and leverage it during my job interviews. And so I really relate to this quote here. Little did I realize that my desire to add value to others would be the thing that added value to me. That is what is so rewarding about league leadership. It is a two-way symbiotic win-win situation, and it just feels so good to help out and come out on top. All right, so once you've identified a role or roles that you're interested in, you can begin to plan out some of the details of the route on how you're going to get there. So I just wanted to go over some details of the timeline and the process so you can plan and prepare. So first we'll look at nominated. So nominated applications are going to be collected in 2 rounds this year, the month of October and the month of January. But I highly, highly encourage you to turn it in earlier. The entire process is confidential. And as I mentioned earlier, you don't actually have to be nominated by somebody else. You can be self-nominated, which you can do just by turning in the application. It's a bit of an antiquated misnomer now that we call it nominated. You know, historically, there was a point in time where you did have to be nominated by another member, but that's no longer the case. And we've just kept, I think we've kept the wording because we do want there to be a distinction between appointed and nominated because the process is different. And then the application does allow you to indicate which roles you prefer to be put into, but keep in mind that the nominating council also just considers your strengths as a whole and also the league's needs. And you might be offered an amazing role, but it's not exactly what you had in mind when you went in. The interview is with the entire nominating council. If it, you know, if we all get to be in person again at some point this year, it's in the boardroom. If not, then everybody's just on one virtual call together. All applicants get an interview. Once interviews are complete, the council deliberates and slates. And slate here just means that this is nominating's formal recommendation to membership, because membership, the general membership is actually who votes on approving these women to be on these roles. The slate is announced at a special event called Meet the Slate, which usually occurs in March. Everything is confidential up until that point. However, the newly slated leaders have already been made aware of the role and accepted the, I guess, the potential to be put into that role, because nothing is official until the members do vote on the slate at the June GMM. I've only ever heard of, this is totally an aside, I've only ever heard of one league ever not passing a slate. And it was like clearly a big shakeup, like something was going on. So you don't need to stress out about that part of it. All right, so appointed. If you recall from earlier, I indicated that these roles can change from year to year. So each year placement council confirms which positions they're going to have the following year, and they confirm that with the board of directors. And then they're able to update the appointed leadership catalog, which I'll show you how to access in a moment. And then the catalog, as well as the applications, open up to everybody in the April to May timeframe. Here you do apply for a specific role, and your application is reviewed and you're interviewed by the appropriate member of the executive management team. So let's say you want to be a new member advisor, which I highly recommend, by the way. It was like my favorite role ever. You'll be interviewed by the VP of membership. And then the appointed leaders are all announced in May. Yes, Avery agrees. She was my co-new member advisor. And now she's the new member program manager. So yes. All right, so resources. I know it's the obvious thing to say, but no one person's path to leadership will look just like another's. It's going to vary based on your skill set, your goals, what roles you're interested in, how the timelines line up with what is going on outside the league in your life. So I'm hoping that these resources can help you just start to map it all out. The map's going to look different for everybody. I know one member who actually made a spreadsheet tracker of every step she planned to take to eventually become president. This was for a different league, but she did it. She became president. And other people are just more comfortable having sort of an idea in their head of, you know, maybe someday I want to be treasurer. All right, so I'm a very visual person and I learn best by watching somebody. So I'm going to actually take you to the JL Boston and AJLI websites to show you how to access a lot of these resources. All right, so let me make this a little bigger. Okay, so hopefully you recognize our JL Boston website. From here, if you go to resources, you'll see the option to select My League. And there's a lot of great resources here, but since we're talking about leadership, I'm going to take you to leadership opportunities. All right, so here you'll see appointed and slated. Slated is nominated. This gives you a little bit more information and then links to a lot of great resources. So if you are interested in an appointed leadership position, and I just mentioned a moment ago that the roles change from year to year, and you're like, okay, what's going to be available? How is it going to fit with me? Click on here to go to the placement catalog. And we'll want to look at the detailed list. So here's just a list of all of the roles. But this detailed list is really what you're going to want to look at. All right. And you really want to look here because it is going to give you not only a list of the roles and what sort of umbrella they fall under, but it tells you how often they meet, what's the time commitment, what kind of work is it, what skills do you need, what skills can you get out of the role. This placement is best for someone who, actually this is my position this year. Sorry, not the chair, I'm just on the committee, this one. And it lists it for every single one of the appointed roles. And so right now this is for this year's leaders. Come spring, if you're interested in an appointed role, you look at this, they'll have it updated for what they're gonna have for the following year. Most of it stays the same year to year. There's usually just minor changes. But like here are all the ones that fall under membership and all the details. All right, if you are looking for the same thing but for the nominated roles, you'll go to the slated leadership descriptions. And this is going to give you the same information. So here's president, summary, term length, responsibilities, what qualities they're looking for, what's the time commitment. You can see 20 plus hours a week in addition to all these other things. The president role is no joke. And it has that for every single role, treasurer, secretary, EVP. All right, I'm gonna go back one page, back to the My League, because I really want to point out this leadership directory under more information. This is the email address for every single one of our leaders this year, if they have a JL Boston email address. And this is going to be a great resource when you have questions about a specific role. All right, now AJLI website, it's easier to get to and manage than you ever thought. You literally go into this corner up here and you click AJLI. And because you're already signed into the JL Boston website, you're automatically signed into the AJLI website. So they have a lot more information on their website, so I could probably spend just an hour touring you around here. I won't, I'll keep it short. They have this menu for all of their resources. And here are all the trainings and meetings. You can also just do a general search. If you have specific questions about, you know, how do I get on the AJLI board? All that information is going to be here. And there they are. All right. So you don't have to go it alone and figure out all the answers to all the questions about how to become a leader yourself. I really encourage you to reach out to someone. So I've included some emails here that will be really helpful. So the first is nominating@jlboston.org. This would be obviously for questions about nominated roles. And then we have placement@jlboston.org, and that's for questions about appointed roles. And then emailing the person currently in the role is probably the best idea. You can search, you can go to that leadership directory I just pointed out. You can also search in our member directory by placement. And you can ask them, like, can you tell me a little bit more about what you're doing right now, what the work is like? What roles did you hold before you took on this role? Did you feel like that prepared you enough for this role? I also encourage signing up for our mentor program. This is fantastic because even if the mentor that you're partnered with isn't somebody who has held roles in areas that you're interested in, they are definitely there to A, be a huge support for you, and B, they can help expand your network because odds are they know somebody who has been involved in the areas that interest you. You can ask your new member or active member advisor. And of course, you can ask me. My email is there. If I don't have the answers, I'm likely to know the right person to connect you with. And I'm more than happy to meet with each and every one of you to ensure you feel well equipped to start planning out a league leadership career. And I do hope you consider league leadership. It's been such a rewarding experience, not only because of how it impacts you, but how it impacts such a positive impact in our community and fulfills our mission. So that is all I have. I will do some questions now. So Jessica, great question. How do you sign up for the mentor program? So this announcement will be coming out probably in the next few months. The mentor program doesn't run league year. So our league year is from July 1st to June, oh, this is embarrassing, 30th or 31st. I'm pretty sure it's 30. Thank you, Avery. But our mentor program runs on a calendar year, and we wanted that because we wanted you to feel like there was some overlap with your mentor and the support system that you have. So that isn't going to roll out for the next year for another couple of months, but stay tuned because that is coming. What other questions do you have? And if you have a really specific question, don't want to ask it in person, 100%, please email me. I already have a couple of meetings set up with people the next couple of weeks to talk about these particulars. You know, this training I just gave is a really high level sort of overview because it really is going to be different for each and every one of you. And I'm more than happy to talk about the particulars on a one-on-one basis. All right, what experience do you need to get on the Nominating Council? So this one is interesting because the Nominating Council is actually looking for a really diverse group of people because we want, when we do deliberations and when we do interviews, we want input from a lot of different viewpoints. So we've had people in the Nominating Council who have been in the league for 10 years. We've had people who've been in the league for 2 years. People have had internal and external placements. So actually Nominating Council is like pretty much a great fit for anybody. And you don't have to have any like hiring or interviewing experience. You know, we already have the questions written up. I'm not going to tell anybody what the questions are ahead of time. So if you have a plan to ask me that, it's not going to happen. All right. Don't think we have any other questions right now. I hope you guys found it helpful, even though it was pretty high level, and I hope to hear from you all. Yes. All right, awesome. Thank you, everybody. I'm so glad to see so many people interested in this.